Okay, I got sounds coming from everywhere.
Bleeps and bloops.
Yeah, I had like 2 laptops bleeping and blooping at the same time. That was a bit crazy. Cool. So I've checked. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on YouTube, and we're live on X, formerly known as Twitter.
For me, it's always Twitter. It will always be Twitter. I don't even know what that first thing you said was.
I feel like I have to keep calling it X in case. I don't know. I have to play into it. Almost like, I don't know. I'm employed by them, but I'm not. So.
It took me a minute. I was waiting to see when the other large companies would change their little icons and logos from the Twitter logo to the X logo. In fact, one of the icon libraries I used, one of the larger ones, you probably know it, did not. It's maybe still doesn't have the X, and that was one of the reasons why I kept the Twitter logo for a while. Now on my website, it is an X because I finally found an appropriate icon.
I found it's an icon set. I can't remember what icon set it is. I used it the other day actually on my other project. Has a lot of libraries you can download and put into Astro.
Yeah, icons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Kyle, thank you for joining me on
Thanks for having me.
What is now technically episode 2 of this, but also it's technically episode 1 because it was formerly known as Personal Stories. Now it is on brand My Roadmaps. Branded. Cool. Let's start then with where you are now. So we'll go where you are now, and then we'll rewind the clock and go back to the beginning.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me. So right now I am taking a little bit of a career transition for me, sort of. We'll get into it. Not really, but sort of. I am now a senior developer advocate at depot.dev, a company that helps accelerate your Docker builds.
Now, you said it is, but it sort of isn't a career transition. So we'll go back in time, and then we'll cover that hopefully at some point. Now, what I have in front of me over here off screen is all the public evidence I can find of it. So hopefully I can feed
you found that one thing, huh?
Yeah, I found that one thing, but we're not going to cover that in this one. We'll cover it in Roadmap After Hours. So we have you as educated in New Jersey, born and raised as well?
Born and raised in New Jersey, yes.
Born and raised as well. Awesome. So while you were in high school is when your first professional experience took place. at Best Buy.
Yes, yes.
Talk to me about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a little bit before Best Buy, I actually started was that my first YouTube channel? I think it was. Yeah, I believe my first YouTube channel. I had started probably around the time of like 14, 15, definitely into it in 16. And I was doing little bits of tech things, not necessarily coding, but tech things. So whatever kind of interesting stuff I could find and like showcase tutorials on the computer. And I wanted to get, I was from a very small town in New Jersey. The town that I grew up in is still very small, and there's not a lot going on. There's basically two businesses that everyone in my high school knew that they would probably end up working at one way or another. There was the local McDonald's or the local grocery store. That was it, right? For miles and miles, that's what you have. And I really wanted to try to avoid that for multiple reasons. It just felt like it was almost being forced upon me because that's what was around. But I also knew I want to do tech. I at least want to try to find my way into it. So yeah, I ended up applying at Best Buy, I think when I was 17, if I remember correctly. Funny enough, my mom was actually like in the store with me at one point. I think this was after I applied, and she like flagged down a manager and was like, my son applied and wants to, I was like, no, mom, please. What are you doing? And ended up landing the job. My manager was like super nice. I spent a lot of time there. I ended up kind of like leaving and coming back. There was a bit of a gap time in the middle there, but basically went from selling computers to uh, learning a lot on my own about fixing computers, and then eventually I got into Geek Squad, which was something I really wanted at the time. For folks who may not know, maybe not in the United States, Geek Squad's just a desk at a Best Buy where a whole bunch of nerdy people would fix computers. I don't think they really do that these days anymore. But when I was doing it, we still like wiped viruses off computers, did storage backups and things like that. It was a really fun time. All types of weird. We would do DVD conversions and things. We would do any little thing that people wanted. I got to use a lot of that time to like anytime there was like some kind of downtime, I would be studying something on the computer code related or whatever, using the opportunity to like look at broken computers and rather than just like wiping them and fixing them, like actually trying to figure out what was wrong with them and such. It was fun for the time.
I think we had things like that as well in the UK, where you would go to someone, and they actually named it Geek Squad as well because
Oh yeah, I mean,
that,
yeah, probably the same.
yeah, I mean that's what everyone referred to that kind of thing as, right? Like you still see them in some small towns in the UK, like actual computer shops where you can go in and they will do anything for you.
I think it's amazing when I see that. I still see a few around, like just old regular computer shops. To be honest, I have no idea what they're doing in there, but I'm genuinely curious.
Helping older people, I imagine.
Yeah, probably. And that has a limited time frame. That's how I felt when I was at the store that has a limited time frame. It ended up being, I mean, off topic a little bit, but at least when I started doing that kind of stuff, this is about the time. Do you remember when what do they call those? I can't remember right now. Where like the FBI warning would come up on your phone, on your computer, and like shut down everything. Ransomware. I was the word I wanted. Ransomware was like really rampant at the time, and all types of viruses and things. But it slowly became, not only were computers less repairable, you can't just like replace the RAM or the hard drive or the whatever for whatever reason. It also just became to a point where like viruses were kind of either less frequent or more sophisticated, and it just became this process of like someone comes in, almost 99.9% of the time, whatever their problem is, it's wipe the computer clean, reinstall Windows or whatever, and start new, which to be honest is not actually the worst option. It just gets boring.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Google has like entire departments dedicated to doing stuff like that, like actually finding out what viruses are doing and like.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah. No, I mean,
I
we
mean,
tried to just like wipe them off the computer without like resetting someone's whole computer. But to be honest, that's not the best thing to do. It was just good learning. So yeah, the best thing to do if you have something like that is to just completely nuke that thing.
yeah, pretty much. So, 2015, is that when you graduated or started your associate degree?
That should be when I finished it. Yeah. So I went to community college in New Jersey. I spoke to guidance counselors and things and told them I want to make websites. That's what I think I want to do. It's not what I do now. Although I do that. I just do it for fun. Uh, Still at this time, I think maybe it was not the most well-known career path. So my guidance counselors were still like, I don't know what that is. So you can do computer science. And I did do some computer science. It was actually really fun. Did some assembly language, did some Java. Did not like Java, still don't like Java. But it was really good programming experience because at this point in my life, I really hadn't done that much programming. A little bit of JavaScript, but like not that much, very little. So it was good to get that experience. My problem was at community college for computer science, they want you to go up to Calc 3, and I am not good at math. I'm a lot better at math these days, but I'm still not very good at math. But I've had a lot more experience. I've done some game development stuff. Once you touch game development, you will start. If you don't understand math now, try making a game. And I feel like, at least for me, it started connecting a lot of dots between why you do things and the reason behind, like, why would I ever want to do this? It's like, well, because it makes sense in this world and doing these things. So I ended up leaving community college and I went to a scammed school. You ever remember hearing of a school called ITT Tech? Used to have TV commercials. None of them sang, thank goodness. They were not one of the rapping or singing commercials.
Wait, so you went ITT Tech?
Yeah, I don't think I list it because I don't want people to know about it. It's a tragic thing. Do you have like an equivalent to this? Do you have like, maybe it's just an awful America thing, but like we have or still have schools that exist specifically as like scams. Like they're not real schools.
Really?
Yeah. So the quick version is, I dropped out of college and my parents were not happy about that. And they said, you need to go back to school. It doesn't have to be that one, but it has to be school. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do web design, which is difficult. And they kind of picked this out for me. They're like, you're going here, or, I'm not really sure what the alternative was. So this school in the US, there was a lot of these types of things. There's less of them now, but it's a school that barely teaches you anything. It doesn't even really meet any accreditation requirements. It is the bare legal minimum for being considered a school. And their whole thing is they take out predatory loans. And specifically, they work with the government. It was like this whole thing where, like, if you got laid off your job, one of the government programs you could get enrolled in was that they would send you to school on some kind of loan program again, which screws over people. I did not take loans. I told them I wanted to just get a bill and I will pay it. Let's make it happen. They were very confused by that. They ended up never sending me a bill for the entire 2 years that I was there. And when it came time to graduate, they said, you can graduate as soon as you pay your bill. And I was like, that's fine. Just give me the bill and I will pay it. And then we'll be done here. It's really that simple. And then the government shut them down for being a scam. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I'm just going to walk away from this. I don't actually care at all. Like, I did all the school things. I don't have a diploma from it. The only thing that would have changed is I would have gotten a little robe and a little piece of paper from a worthless school that got shut down. And I was like, do I care about that piece of paper? I'm not going to pay the bill. They're not going to ask. They never contacted me. They never asked me for any of that money. They don't exist anymore.
Wow. That is crazy. Let's take a little quick comment break. People on YouTube are watching now. So Nicholas says hi. Hello. Someone about roadmap. If it is possible, please include YouTube videos in roadmaps. We do. But if you have parts of roadmaps that you want to put YouTube videos in, submit a PR. I'll look at it. If it's decent and it's English and it fits, I'll merge it and then we're good. Cool. Kyle, you mentioned, and bearing in mind what you're talking about is 10 years ago at this point, right? Roughly 9-10 years ago, right? You mentioned, hey, I'm 33, right? We can age ourselves here. You mentioned that you were still trying to learn web development. Now, I'm interested to not exactly, but how were you trying to learn? Because bearing in mind, like, Code Academy didn't exist, right? We didn't exist. YouTube did.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube was, I mean, I mentioned I started a YouTube channel when I was like 14 or so. And the reason is, I'm sure a lot of people our age probably remember, when YouTube was new, so this is like the time of MySpace. Remember this? Like MySpace and MetaCafe and Trick Life and um, internet forums and Gaia Online and all these types of things. And at this time in the world, like using HTML casually happens. Like you have profiles, places they let you put in a little HTML. MySpace lets you put in a little HTML. So like there's a little bit of that just going around on the internet. And I wanted to just I was interested in this. Just my brain, gravitated towards it, and I was like, that's cool. And I started looking at videos on YouTube. And most of the videos on YouTube were very academic. A lot of them were in English, but with heavy accents that made it very difficult to process as a student trying to learn. And normally it's like in the format of, here's a slideshow behind me, and I'm gonna click before it while I speak. It's very boring. Yada yada. So I said, I think I can take the same information that these people are presenting and maybe make it more digestible. And that's how I started on YouTube. So when I say, getting blurry there. There we go. When I say, trying to learn web dev, what I was honestly doing was a lot of the times was watching some of these other like really academic guys on YouTube and then taking what I had learned from them, setting some kind of goal. So like, let's say making a landing page or something like that, just like a 1-page thing. And then I would take that goal and turn it into a video. So my goal for this video is to write a script, complete a web page, and then show people how I did it. And the goal is not even necessarily for the people watching. It's actually for myself. How do I know if I actually learned the thing? Well, if I can do it and then also explain how I did it, then I can guarantee that I've learned it. And you will find out when you're trying to explain something that you've done, you may not realize that you don't actually know why certain things work or did. You just kind of did them. You saw, you copy and pasted. I don't know. You did whatever. But when you try to actually answer questions, as you often do in a video format, then you realize that you've really answered all the questions. You've learned it.
Mm. That's interesting you say that, because that's exactly what I did like 4 years ago or something. Like I made some videos. We won't go deep into it, but I made some videos because I was doing something at work and wanted to cement the knowledge, or it was for the exact reason you just said, which is a reason now actually creating roadmaps. I see gaps in content knowledge, and they're just prime places to just insert good content. Like I was learning something at work. I think an exact example was something to do with Postgres replication, something, right? There was no content out there. There was nothing. There was docs. That was it. Which, don't get me wrong, is good, but you want to see someone doing it, right?
Yes.
So I figured it out, did it at work, and then was like, okay, let's do that again. Let's do it in a cleaner environment. We'll record it and we'll upload it, and it did pretty well. So people do want to see that kind of stuff. After Geek Squad is where everything changes, actually, doesn't it?
That would be a big moment in my life.
But wait, let's pause slightly before that, because in 2016 you created TechSquid.
That's true. I did. Yeah, this guy right here.
That guy right there. And who still remains your branding.
Yeah, I stick with it. I don't. Come on, there we go. I don't make that many videos these days. However, as you can see, I'm hoping that will be changing shortly. So there was a gap in between, but that is who I was before my last job. It's who I've been on Twitter this whole time, and who I want to continue to be growing outwards in the future.
Because the content we spoke in the company that we're about to talk about. We spoke while you were there about your YouTube career, and I said these videos are good. You should do more, and I believe you did do more after that point.
A little bit, yeah.
And I was watching a few prior to this, and the one where you tried out a Kickstarter, which was a really small, like 6-key keyboard.
Yes, yeah, that was a fun one.
Just a good video.
Thank you.
The content is it's just good. It's good content. So TechSquid started in 2016. Why TechSquid?
Yeah, it actually started, you may not know, as RoboSquid. You may be able to tell this
Okay.
logo is actually supposed to be a robot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that name for like 2 or 3 videos, and it was fine. I just realized that it didn't speak much to my brand necessarily. It was kind of random, like Robo Squid. It's like, what, is it about robots? Is it about electronics or something like that? And I realized that Tech Squid was available, and it fit me a little bit more. I could have done things like Code Squid or whatever, but I wanted to keep it slightly generic in case I wanted a little bit of room. That's where the name came from. If you've ever tried to get a domain name or a username these days, absolutely impossible. Even back in 2016, absolutely impossible. So TechSquidTV, even like TechSquid was not available. RoboSquid was not available. So I had to add the TV for YouTube, and yeah, it was so complicated. But eventually, I still have the original sketch. It's in one of these books somewhere, where I came up with this logo and drew it out, and I really like the logo. So I was like, I'm keeping that. We just got to work on a name now.
It's funny you say like this was like 8 years ago. At this point, eight years ago, it was hard to lock down usernames and domain names. Today, I walked to nursery, like my daughter's eating crisps or whatever and putting at cars. I'm searching domains, trying to find stuff. Right, just this morning, loads of different things. I also discovered this morning that you cannot have a domain name that has GitHub in it anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yep, it lets you add it to your basket on Namecheap, then it says that it's banned.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You just copyright protection and stuff like that. But anyway, let us move on to December 2017. I'll let you. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Probably I'll share a little bit too what I think people don't need to know or whatever. But this was also like an interesting point in my personal life. A lot of stuff is going on that I'm not gonna go too deep into, but the part that I will share is I was more or less being kicked out of my parents' house at this point. So I had to go. But I didn't have any way to do that. I worked at Geek Squad, and I was making, I think, 11 something an hour, and that just was not enough to get an apartment. Even with a roommate, that would have been pretty tough. Which that's what I was trying to do at the time, trying to find 1 or 2 roommates, going around doing things. And at some point during this whole process, probably like within the span of a month, this is all happening. Like, hey, you got to get out of here. Finding roommates. I went back and forth to Philly like 2 times to check out different apartments, and had possible roommates with me that ended up not becoming my roommates. And during the middle of this, a friend of mine who referred me to a job in the past, but I had not gotten it, referred me to CircleCI, the CI/CD company, which at this time I think had somewhere under 100 people. I can't remember exactly how many people at the time, but it was much smaller than it is today, and much smaller than it was at its peak. And they were willing to hire a junior support engineer. So this is where I didn't even know what I didn't know. I just, I thought I knew some things. I thought I could make websites. I thought I knew some JavaScript. I thought I knew some Git. And I did know some of those things, but not nearly as much as what like the average developer truly knows when they're doing it every day, and not just kind of for fun in between their, their part-time job and things like that. So it was very stressful. It was very much trial by fire. It was a lot of just reading and testing things, doing things on the weekends, just to make sure that once I got in there, I started panicking. I was like, oh, I don't know anything. I gotta do it. True story. I did the technical challenge for them. This was the first technical challenge I had ever done for any company ever. And they, as a CI/CD company, were asking me to make an example of testing code. I had never tested code before. I didn't even know you could do that. So I had to Google, what do you mean test code? What is jest and everything? It was so hard. I literally screamed at one point. Like, I'm at my computer, just like, this has to work. This is so important to me, and like, I did not finish my technical challenge. My technical challenge never worked. It did not properly test my code. There was an error. I was never able to fix it. I felt horrendous about it. It still stresses me out thinking about it. I was very, very lucky because the person who was doing my interview, they were doing like a pair programming interview where they looked at my solution, kind of work, and asked me like, how did you go about this? And I explained like, okay, I was just learning about this and yada yada, and I showed them the error, and they were also not able to fix it, which was a really good, win for me. We went through it for a really long time. I think we went over time. They were trying to go through and figure out the problem with me and help me, which was really great. We were never able to do it. And I think that's what worked in my favor. They're like, hey, if I can't do it and they can't do it, we're on the same level. So that was my way in.
It's interesting you mentioned the CircleCI technical challenge because it sounds similar to the one that I did, and I felt the same way.
Oh God!
And at that point, I'd already had 3 jobs, like 3 professional jobs, like as an engineer.
Oh, okay.
But it was all like sysadmin and DevOps type things, right? All of a sudden, I'm having to like create a Ruby app and test it and make it deploy on CircleCI. And obviously, I say obviously I passed it. I had Brian O'Halloran.
Yeah.
He was my guy for it. So he was really good. He helped me and then helped me in my career while I was there. So that was awesome. An interesting thing about your career at CircleCI, which I think is the whole point of these streams, is exactly what you just said. Is that you went from you knew you wanted to be in tech, right? You knew you wanted to be in it, and you've had a great career since then, and now you're where you are. And you were at more physical technical jobs prior to that, which is always good for knowledge, like always good. I do fear that people nowadays miss out on that, actually picking up server blades and putting them into racks and fiddling around with the screws and serialing into them and stuff. It's a forgotten art now, I think. But what's we could fast forward through your CircleCI career a little bit up to like, you went from support engineer, and then you must have done good at it because you became a senior support engineer at some point. Let's talk about the transition from when you were doing that to when you were actually developing things at CircleCI.
Yeah, that was fun. I did go. I went from junior to senior pretty quickly. I benefit, I think, a lot from just a tip for folks, just because the company was smaller at the time as well. So I had the benefit of not only ramping up very quickly because of all the stress, but also, there was not a huge organization of people. So the competition, as it is, which I would never really say, was lower. But yes, then it kind of went like this. CircleCI at the time was coming up with a new product. It was kind of hard to define. I remember, I'm going to forget his last name, Nathan something, developed this product for CircleCI. The concept was this, and it may start to sound familiar. Users in the CI platform would be testing their code, and a lot of their projects would have reusable or similar parts, right? Like if you're testing 2 different JavaScript projects, your CI config for the 2 of them probably looks pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. So this guy, Nathan, had the idea, what if we could extract that out and kind of make it like a package manager, like how TypeScript works, and make it so that you could write parts of your config into separate little files and then import them and reuse them. That was a fun idea. Yeah. Orbs, exactly. They were called orbs, ORBS. I forget where exactly the name came from, but I remember the picture we used was that GIF from Labyrinth. You remember the path master, or whatever his name is?
Sounds good.
It works. It wasn't maybe not the most brandable name, but they asked everyone in the company. They said, "Hey, we have this thing. Here's some documentation. We would like everyone to try it out and see what you can do with it." And it was kind of advertised as a way to write integrations, even though it wasn't really for integrations. It was for writing reusable CI config. But that gave me an idea. At the time, CircleCI switched to version 2. You may remember that was maybe slightly before you had joined.
Yeah, I can't remember the year that I joined. I think it was 2020.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then
2021.
I think 2.0 had been out for like at least a solid year by then.
I remember that people were still using old config versions though, and that was causing problems later on.
There probably still are.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we switched to CircleCI 2.0, a lot of things changed. Yeah, the whole platform changed quite a bit. But one of the things that they had sunset at the time was the way that their old Slack integration had worked, which would send you a little notification for every build that they called it. But when CircleCI 2.0 came around, this concept of a build kind of went away. Now it's like this longer thing called a pipeline. Which is more complicated. That's why the Slack thing didn't work. I recreated a lot of that functionality in the orbs, which was basically just a bunch of shell scripts and nonsense that looked at environment variables and stuff to send a notification to Slack as a part of your CI build. That was fun. It worked really well. And the folks who were in charge of orbs said, hey, we like that orb. How would you like to write more of them? And I said, let's do it. And so my new job became, I forget, we had multiple different names, but we'll use the latest one, which was software development engineer. And I was in charge of leading the team / writing a lot of the orbs for CircleCI.
So it's down as partner integration engineer.
Yeah, that was the first title.
Yeah. So it seems like the title changed around like late 2021, which I'm pretty sure I'm on your LinkedIn, not mine, but I'm pretty sure I joined. Let's have a little scroll. I joined December 2021.
Oh, okay.
And I do recall, we had brief interactions at CircleCI, mainly actually when I was writing orbs. I remember I wrote an orb. I wrote a couple of orbs that are based around triggering things from Git commit messages. And I definitely came to you for help at some point, and you definitely helped me. I remember that. But I remember knowing you as like because an SDK is a software development kit, right? So you were essentially, like, funnily enough, you kind of were a dev advocate in a way.
I definitely was, yeah.
There. Because like a big part of dev advocate is sort of like, my voice is lower, come closer to the microphone.
I was just thinking I might have to do the same, just in case.
It could be like a pundit. Yeah, like a lot of dev advocate stuff now is more of the borderline influencer stuff that you kind of see, right? But the main point of it was like bridging the gap, right? Like creating these SDKs, which at CircleCI was creating orbs. And I don't know, did you have any actual customer interaction at CircleCI?
Well, I mean, obviously, when I was in support, there was a lot of customer interaction. But when I moved over to writing the orbs, all of my interaction became in the open source community, which I really loved. So everyone that I interacted with was either opening an issue on one of my repos or contributing a pull request or something of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, because that really is like probably where your developer advocate stuff kind of started. I'd say definitely feels like it.
That and YouTube, but yeah, I really enjoyed interfacing with the open source crowd, specifically because the open source crowd was really educational to me, right? Like I spent a lot of my time at Circle not really having that many people managing me, to be honest. When I was on support, I definitely had managers, although when you get up to senior, you're not being looked after as much or being mentored as much. And then when I went into creating orbs, I started that team and then ended up leading that team. So there was never really, anything. I'm not exaggerating when I say, like, if you go look at anything about orbs at CircleCI right now, there's a very good chance that it was either written by me or very heavily influenced by me. The way that you write orbs, the whole CLI for generating them and all that was pretty much I thought of it and then wrote it. There wasn't like a lot of in between or a lot of like going back and forth with people. So I really got a lot of the mentoring, I'll say, from the open source community, because I would write some code. A lot of times, remember, I'm writing tons of integrations. I think I wrote over 70 plus integrations for all types of different technology that I don't know. So like a lot of the times it's, take some CLI or API or something like that, look at the documentation, map it to this thing, make it work. That's the bare minimum. But then the people who are professionals at these things, let's use like any of the AWS services, they come in and they have much more specific needs, or much more idealized versions of these integrations based on their experience using that tool. So they come in either with the issue or the pull request or the, hey, your code looks sloppy, and they come in and fix it. So having like all of those really smart people come in to contribute on the things that I was working on because they need it themselves was very useful.
I mean, those orbs, I don't know if anyone who's watching has used CircleCI, but the orbs like drove the experience, in my opinion. Like you would use them. They're the same as importing anything into your code, right? Like npm, try building anything and not using anything that's from npm at all, right? It's the same thing. Like you used orbs in every single configuration. So they're a massive driver.
It was possible to do it without it, of course, but we always tried to push it. I'm skipping ahead real quick and we go in real fast, but one of the last things I did when I was at Circle is one of the things I'm most proud of. It's still not like heavily well known, but it is used a lot. I'll explain. I actually wrote a real SDK for CircleCI, which was really fun, and I would love to see that continue, but I don't believe there's been an update on it in a while. But I had this thought, I'm spending a lot of time on orbs and CircleCI in general and yada, yada. CircleCI and most CI platforms, almost all CI platforms, are based around config files, YAML. There's like one that I can think of that's not YAML based, but I'm going to skip over that. The problem I had with YAML personally was I had always felt like, and it had always been advertised to me by these places, that YAML was meant to be this intermediary where you don't need to be a developer to write it. So, it's not low code or no code, but it's not code either. So you could have, the developer write the tests, and then you could have some other DevOps engineer write the config who doesn't necessarily need to know whatever language is over there. I always felt, though, that the YAML file was not serving either one of these people very well. I felt like if you wanted a no-code solution, you should have a no-code solution. And if you want a solution for developers, you should have a code solution for developers. This YAML thing in the middle, I feel like is very limiting and doesn't actually necessarily cater to either side. So one of the last things I did is I wrote an SDK that maps all of CircleCI's YAML to TypeScript. And that gave you a whole bunch of interesting benefits. And you would start to notice like the benefits like would just appear out of nowhere, like things that I didn't necessarily plan for exactly. You just start realizing like, oh, it can do that. Oh, it can do this. Like one of the most interesting things was when you think about orbs at CircleCI, orbs are packages of config, and everything that has been coded around that is to emulate this package manager. But if you write your config in JavaScript, you can just use the npm package manager, the pnpm package manager. You can use private Git repositories. You can do all of these things. You can compartmentalize different parts of your config that you couldn't before. You could write functions into your config. So like I had an example in the repo, it's still in there. This is a config that only deploys on Fridays, or sorry, other way around, only deploys not on Fridays. There we go. But it has like that logic in there because it's using JavaScript to run it. It never, like, for all types of different reasons, it never got like heavily advertised. However, you can check it out on NPM. It's open source and all that. A few of the larger companies, that have lots and lots of configs, ended up adopting it. And last I checked, it's been a few weeks now, but last I checked, it gets about 33,000 downloads per week. Although that is inflated because it is an SCI environment. So of course it's getting a lot of extra downloads.
Yeah, true. That would be like, yeah, I've seen that on ones of my own where I've had a package, or I've like adopted a package. I adopted like a snipcart package a while back, a Gatsby snipcart package. And the stats were massive. But it turns out it's because I was like running it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's the same as nowadays, like Umami analytics. It counts your local host as well. So
Yeah, got to write good filters if possible.
Like, oh wow, I've just put this project out and it's already got 500 visits a day. Yeah, 460 are from me in my local host. So,
whoops. Me looking at any of like my TikTok views or something. Ooh, it's got like 10 views. Oh.
So you said skip along, but does that sort of encapsulate your experience at CircleCI?
Sorry, what do you mean skip along?
When you said I'm going to skip to the last thing you did.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of my time was spent improving the situation between orbs. Like when orbs first were released by CircleCI, and again, the guy who like invented it probably had a slightly different vision for how it ended up turning out. But the way that orbs were written originally was you wrote a YAML file, one big YAML file, and you kind of like in the similar way that you push like something to a registry, either like an npm package or a Docker package, you would push this to the registry. But there was very little context around that or tooling, and it was very, very much not how developers experience things typically. So a lot of my time was actually spent slowly building up the developer experience. What's up, Lawrence? Building up the developer experience around building those orbs. So like from writing a simple file, what I turned it into, well before I left, but one of, where it got to by the end of it was I created inner CLI in a init command. So that would generate for you a project, a lot more similar to like, if you've initted any other type of like TypeScript project, Astro project, React project, whatever. There's always some kind of init command and it generates for you everything. I also then we broke it down even deeper. Like I said, it was designed to be a single YAML file. So we actually came up with a way to break it out into multiple files. So we took all the top level keys in the YAML file and broke them into folders. And now you would have like a directory for each component of an orb. So orbs are made up of components. They have jobs and steps and executors and things like that. So now we would have a folder for each one of those. And each folder would have YAML inside. There was another problem. This is why I don't like YAML. And you can see how I got closer and closer to this SDK at the end. When you're writing YAML, and this is not just a CircleCI thing again, this is just a YAML thing. Like most CI providers have this exact same problem. When you're writing YAML, a lot of the times in a CI environment, you are writing Bash or some scripting language directly. It's not uncommon. Or you could put in a binary. That's probably the best way to do it. But if you're doing Bash, it's very hard to manage, update, deal with that Bash, because when it's inside of YAML, you can't execute it. You can't get syntax highlighting. You can't test it. It is essentially text. And it's very, very difficult to work with that text at that point. So one of the better things we did for the orb SDK, if you want to call it that, we called it the orb DK, was not only did we break it up into multiple files, but we added a new directive. So CircleCI had this concept of parameters that they use like two angled brackets to enclose parameters, kind of like mustache templating. And we added a new directive in there that was like a variable, but the variable would point to a folder or directory that would contain whatever file you wanted to inject in there. So most of the time it was a Bash script, but it literally could have been anything. It could have been Python. It could have been anything you wanted. It would just take whatever content was there and put it in your config. And that made it a lot more approachable as a developer to build one of these integrations. Now you can write your Bash with the syntax highlighting. Now you can focus on just the components that you want. Now you can add code owners to individual files. It feels like writing software, even though it's writing YAML.
Well, what you were talking about, you essentially fixed here docs. Right? That's what you fixed.
Yeah, a little. Yeah. Okay.
Because you're right. Like a lot of things you'll find, like you said, in the orbs, it's YAML, but you want to execute things. So you have to create a here doc.
Yeah.
And in there you have to put code. But you don't know it's going to work because, like you said, it's just text is read at build time, right? So it's crazy. Also, fun fact, what is a here doc was my number one interview question when hiring.
Really? Oh, for you
DevOps.
to ask.
Yeah, when I was
Okay.
hiring DevOps engineers, yeah, it's my number one. I think it's a massively like, I was obsessed is a bad word, but I was really into like the power of here docs and like the fact that like you go to any sort of configuration language, and if it doesn't do it natively, chances are you can put a here doc there and it's going to do what you want to some degree.
That's what I like about like just Linux in general, the
Yeah.
whole like pipeline scenario. Like you can always just feed stuff in. I actually did a small tangent. We talked about how I create projects to learn things. It's
Yeah.
still on my GitHub if anyone wants to check it out. I never like quite finished it, but I learned what I wanted to learn. I built what I'm going to call a simulator, not an emulator, because I think emulator is probably a strong word. But I built a Linux terminal simulator in TypeScript. So it has a JSON-based file system. It has programs, but the programs are actually written in TypeScript, so that's kind of fun. It runs them at runtime. So like when you type ls, there is an ls command, and it will list out the files in that directory, but it's using like a TypeScript function as the ls thing. But it's actually using file descriptors and pipes and things like that under the hood. It just uses like it uses TypeScript types to emulate what Linux is typically doing.
Wait, Utbah says Linux and Bash scripts, two critical technologies in DevOps, 100%. And I'll say it again. Like in my last role, I was hiring for a junior DevOps engineer. Someone in our Discord asked it as well earlier, actually. Like they were going through our DevOps roadmap, and at one point it points you pretty early towards the entire Linux roadmap. And they're like, oh, what point should I learn up to before I continue with the DevOps one? And I was like, well, looking at it, quite a lot of it, actually. Like, quite a lot of it. I think a lot of the no-code stuff nowadays and the shiny object stuff with tooling really brings people away from, like, classic Linux usage and bash scripting. Like, me and you, Kyle, from hearing your story, we started very similar. Like, very, very similar in what we were doing. My Geek Squad was 11 years in the army, but it's the same thing when we got out. And another thing, yeah, what I was going to say here, what I started to say earlier was your experience at CircleCI is sort of a real example to what I want to tell a lot of people who are trying to get into entry-level jobs, right? Like, some people will say all this stuff about, make sure your portfolio is really good and network and all these kind of things. But the most underrated thing to do is just get somewhere. And one of the most underrated roles to have is customer support.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And from my experience doing customer support, that's probably because it burns you out pretty fast.
It does.
So it's pretty like high throughput of people going through it. But like you've done, look, you went into CircleCI as a support engineer and you said that you felt completely overwhelmed. But then you became, at least when I was there, I immediately knew you as like a real key figure in engineering. So
I appreciate that. I don't know why. I think a lot of people kind of had that vibe, but I think a lot of that just was because I was there for a while. So, like my name was known, but like, yeah, I think a lot of people had this weirdly elevated view of who I was at Circle. No, and I did not. I don't know where that came from. That was not something that I portrayed.
I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from people working with you, and then telling other people. I would ask my own team. I was in the. I haven't said it. This isn't my podcast. This is yours, but. Kyle worked in the realm that he said he worked. I worked in DevOps customer engineering, which was you're a DevOps engineer, but you're also customer support at the same time. So we sort of like went into calls with salespeople and account executives, and we were like their technical henchmen kind of thing, toss aside. But yeah, I'd ask my team, "Oh, how do I do this?" Oh, Kyle, he'll know. So, but yeah, the whole point of it here is what people are saying in the chat right now is like customer support, help desk. If you want to get into anything to do with infrastructure or DevOps or anything like that, I would say that is a pretty good way in because it's low barrier to entry. But once you're in, you can separate yourself from other people that, and this isn't throwing shade on anyone, but some people just want to be that. If you want to go in and be more, it's, you can elevate yourself. You can start writing scripts. You can start doing little things here and there. And then you become, then you become staff software developer at CircleCI.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I recommend this to people all the time, that they should, when we're doing the Twitter Spaces and things like that, and people are saying, I want an entry level job or something. I see a lot of people. This happens too often. I see a lot of people. I know Lawrence knows this too, because Lawrence is in the audience. But we see people on Twitter Spaces come in all the time. They say, I'm currently in college, or I just got out of college. I have essentially no portfolio at all. And I want to get a junior position as a engineer or something like that. And that's just not going to happen. I mean, it can, especially if you're going through internships, but those are also less they used to be huge. Like, internships used to be this huge gate, but I don't think it's around as much anymore. But you don't have to go all the way to, engineer or whatever right away. I think a lot of people miss there is a ladder that you could climb and probably should climb, because I think that taking small steps is more likely to work than trying to take big leaps. But I also think, and I was in the same spot, I think a lot of people don't even realize that there are smaller steps, because like you heard me say earlier, I thought I wanted to make websites. That's all I know. That's all I am exposed to, and that's all I can fathom in my mind as a potential job. So when I'm job searching, I'm searching for web designer, web developer, this kind of thing. I got into support mostly because someone told me they thought that I should, and that was a good idea. And I didn't touch web things at all for most of my time there. It was just Linux coding and learning a ton of stuff. And is that exactly what I was looking for? No. And even today, I mean, I'm very happy with where I am, but am I a web designer or developer? No, that's okay though. That's, you go down your path, however it works out. You don't need to, be locked into this one thing.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people are agreeing with us. And funnily enough, I tried to do what you just said. So when I decided to leave the army, I was like, 6 odd years ago, DevOps was super cool, right? So I was like, that's going to be me. I'm going to be that guy. I'd spend my weekends on Code Academy, Roadmap, shout out Roadmap. I used the DevOps Roadmap. And then I went for my interview, 3-piece suit, by the way.
I think I was wearing something like this to my last interview.
I do now, but back then it was my first interview in 11 years. In fact, you don't have to interview to get into the army, so that wasn't an interview. 3-piece suit, went there, went for a DevOps engineer role, right? Went through the interview. Don't have a clue what I'm doing, obviously. All I've been doing is Code Academy stuff, looking at some AWS services. That's all I've done. I had no idea. But, and I'm not advocating people do this at all, but because I turned up in a 3-piece suit, that was more of a sort of personification of my attitude. Is the
thing. That's valid.
I went there and I really, really wanted it. And they then came back like, well, we don't think you're at this standard yet, but what we do have is a customer support role. And I was like, I'll take it.
That's great.
Bang.
I'm glad that they were able to recognize that too and then offer to, because that's not always how it goes down.
No, it's definitely a two-way street. Like what we're talking about here, that you can do as an individual is you can recognize that customer support role to a completely valid entry into tech. But, well, no, that's it. You can apply for them and get them. But there is rare occasions where you can apply for the role slightly above what you want and they can see your potential, but also, never rely on someone else, right? So,
yeah. It's a good point to point out there that and I don't know if this is something I would say is all that relevant in your first job. It did work out for you. But applying to roles, having a good persona, a good front, right? Just if someone likes you, if a company likes you, if they think that you are valuable to them, even if it doesn't work out, like I've had, this has happened to me already multiple times. People say like, that didn't work, but maybe we have this role coming out, or we have another role coming up. You should apply again. And applying again is always great too, because you're always in their system already. So they have like notes about how things went previously. So if you had a good interview and it didn't work out, applying again within a month or so for another role could be an easy win.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been a hiring manager for a few years, and the amount of people that would come for an interview for any role, but I was mainly interviewing for junior roles. So junior software engineer, junior SRE. There'd be people that were very, very technically competent, but would have no personality. And then there'd be somebody who is, they could, and their attitude is great, and they actually care about you being there with them, if you know what I mean. Like that, like it's a conversation. I'd say, I wouldn't say I've been successful in my career, but you could say that the fact that I have one would mean success. I don't know if you do the same thing. I know we've only got 4 minutes left, but I will, in an interview, even though I'm the one interviewing, I will always try and control it is the wrong word, but I'll always try and like put myself on their level in a way and try and make it more of a conversation than it is I'm sat there with my hands like this waiting for them to ask me questions. That's done me a lot of success.
Yeah, I promise anyone listening, if you go into an interview and the whole time it feels like it was a process that no one wanted to take part in, it didn't go well. It's kind of messed up for like certain reasons and whatever, but like truth is, and I think some people know this, some people don't, but I'm exceptionally introverted, right? And actually like shy and all that. This is my YouTube persona. And I can do that, and I do this in interviews and things like that. As soon as this camera comes off, there's going to be a huge, like just turning it off and all that. But like that's all stuff that helps in real life. You gotta, if you're someone like me, you learn to put on a certain persona in certain situations to help you gain an advantage. That's how, I think everyone does it to some degree. But if you're in an interview, you want to get on that personal level with stuff. You don't want to be spending too much of that time on whatever prepared questions they have available. You want to go off on tangents, and don't force it, or, don't go off on tangents where you don't need it. But if you're getting a response back from the person that you're speaking to that is positive, it seems like they're leaning into it, feed into it. Make sure that they remember the positive interaction they had with you, or the positive conversation they had, because that's going to matter more than did they get this little question right or this little question right.
Yeah, 100%. You got to play the game.
Got to play the game.
And look, I'm the same as you. Like, I will, we had a call last night testing this stream. I was sat here playing League of Legends. I'm not going outside. I'm not talking to people. But you have to turn it on. You just have to. Like, you absolutely have to. And it seems like a lot of people in the chat it seems like we've all had the same shared experience in becoming like SREs or senior DevOps engineers or whatever. It's usually some sort of customer support-y, low sysadmin type role, then moving up and up and up until you become, that's definitely the way to do it. And a lot of people are missing out on that, I think.
I think we're seeing at least 3, possibly 4 people in chat saying they had similar paths. So that's good confirmation to anyone who's thinking maybe I should do it too. You should.
Yeah. Right. I know that we are at time. I know you've got a hard stop. So 60 seconds, plug everything that you've got.
Dan, thanks for having me here. I'm going to do the quick plug. Folks, I am currently at depot.dev. I'm going to be making all types of really cool content there. You can follow me and them on Twitter. I also do some other fun stuff. Oh, I can't grab it. There's a green screen behind me. I make some custom VHS tapes. That's like my art side project. If that sounds anything interesting or cool to you, you can check out Lost Pixel Lore on any of the social medias. Other than that, I'll be doing all the dev stuff here and everywhere else. Follow me there, TechSquidTV.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for joining, Kyle. It was great to hear your story.
Great to see you
again. Great to talk to you again. And, we would do a Q&A, but we're at time. Carl's got a